Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to yet another edition of Walk and Talk. I've already done my mile and a half for today, so kind of sitting here catching my breath again before I head back toward the vehicle. I'm actually in a place called Spring Park, also known as Veterans Park, Talladega, Alabama today. And it's, again, one of my favorite places to walk. It's usually very calm, very peaceful, very quiet, kind of in the midst of a residential neighborhood, but it's designed for the public to use. So there's a walking track, there's a playground, there are picnic tables, just a pretty nice place considering, there's not a lot of fancy things here, but it's very nice nonetheless. And it's rather noisy over here behind me. I don't know if you can hear that. There must be something big going on right now. I hear fire trucks going every which way. Don't see anybody within my vicinity, so I'm assuming there's nothing right here, but certainly behind me nearby, there's something over there. Now, one of the reasons I love to come here, aside from the fact that it's just beautiful and peaceful and a nice walk, is because back over the hill, I'll try to point. You definitely can't see it, but back over the hill right there, there's a, by the way, there's a graveyard behind me. I showed some of that earlier, but back over the hill right there is historic Talladega College. Now, if you're not familiar with Talladega College, it is one of the oldest, I should say, historically black colleges in the state of Alabama. I think there are about 17 that are kind of in that range, but as far as Alabama, they are the oldest, and they have a very entertaining band. Very, very talented individuals in that band. And the reason I bring that up is because they're over the hill right here. And so a lot of days when I come out here to walk at Spring Park / Veterans Park, I can actually hear the Talladega band playing behind me. They're practicing during the day, and that is just so entertaining. And it's almost as if I'm getting my own private, show. Even though I can't see it, I can definitely hear it, even from as far away as it is, and it's always entertaining. I always kind of get a kick out of that. And that brings me to a story from just a few years ago. I went in one day to get my hair cut by my barber, and he told me that one of the men who kind of, I don't know what you would call him, kind of a wanderer of the streets, at least walked around, asking people for money, that type, had come in his shop just a few minutes earlier that day. He assumed to ask him for something. He usually gave him a few dollars, let him sweep the sidewalk or wash the windows. He kind of was used to him coming in. But this day, this man had come in, and he came in and he asked the barber, he said, "Can you do me a favor?" He said, "Sure, I'll do you any kind of favor you want." He said, "Well, can you hold some money for me?" He said, "Yeah, okay. How much money are we talking about?" He said, "I got $200, which he was surprised. This man, seemed to be homeless or whatever, didn't seem to have much. But that day he said he had $200. And he said, "I need you to hold the $200 for me over the weekend, and I'll come back and get it on Monday." Now, he's telling me the story because I've just come in right after this man has come through, and he had the $200 there in his hand. But he said, "I need to hold the money until Monday." He said, "I'm going to a party tonight, and I don't want anybody taking my money." So he said, "Well, I'll do that." But he was joking with me. He said, "If you're not back in here Monday morning when I open up, I'm going to keep your money." He said, No, I'll be back. And he asked him then, he said, "What kind of party are you going to?" He said, "Oh, it's going to be a good party. It's going to be a good party." He said, "Puddin Man is going to be there. Puddin Man is going to be there." And, of course, he just didn't, think anything of it. He didn't know who Puddin Man was, but he didn't think a lot of it. And the man walked out. He held the money, and that was it. Well, I went back by there, I guess it was a week or two later, and, to get my hair cut again. And I asked him about it. I said, "Did that man ever come back and get his money?" He said, "Oh, yeah, he was back bright and early Monday morning." Said he came back and got his money. I gave it back to him. And he said, "I was so curious, like you probably were me telling it earlier." He said, "I asked him, who in the world is Puddin Man?" He said, "I don't know. That's just his name. He's Puddin Man. So he's a funny man. He's Puddin Man." And so Dexter got to thinking about it. That's the barber's name. He got to thinking about it a little bit farther, and he decided he'd try to dig in. And he started asking customers that had come in. Now, this is between the time that he dropped off the money, picked it up, and me coming in. And said he asked a few people, said, "What does he mean by Puddin Man?" He said, oh, Puddin Man. Said, "Yeah." Said, "Bill Cosby was over at the college, Talladega College, a week or two ago, and he put on a show," and said probably the party he was talking about was he was going to hear Puddin Man do his comedy act. Of course, that just blew our minds. He called Bill Cosby Puddin Man. And if you're old enough, like I am, I'm 46, you know why he called him Puddin Man now. He was Puddin Man because he was the one who did the Jell-O pudding commercials growing up. And so that's all he knew to call him was Puddin Man. So I kind of got a little kick out of that. You know, it's kind of just it started out just seemed kind of strange, but it made good sense. I mean, what is Bill Cosby to anybody at that point but Puddin Man? Now, I know Bill Cosby's life didn't quite go farther than that as far as, you know, he had some major issues and problems, but this is from way back. So this is when Bill Cosby was still just the good old funny Puddin Man that he was, and I think it's funny. So every time I hear walking, and especially if I hear the band that kind of reminds me of that story, I kind of look back over my shoulder at Talladega College and think about the time Puddin Man was there. And I get a kick out of that. But anyway, here's the question for today. I'm glad you came with me to walk and talk a little bit, but here's the question for today, and that is very simply stated. Tell me about your recovery. We've already asked who you are. We've asked about how you came to know transplant. We've asked about how long you waited. But this question today, tell me a little bit about your recovery. If you've had your transplant, whether it's heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, whatever, tell me about your transplant, how your recovery was, how you're coming in your recovery, and just tell those stories. I mean, I know things are not always easy for all of us, but for the majority of us, they eventually, and I say that carefully, they eventually become success stories, and I'd love for you to share yours in the comments below. I'm sure you'll be a tremendous encouragement to someone, at least give someone some guidance and some advice, and you'll be a big help in doing that. But nonetheless, I've already done my mile and a half, but I've got quite a ways to walk back to the car, so I'm gonna get up and head on back out and see if I can't get the rest of my day going here. But it's been good so far to walk and talk with you, and we'll talk to you again another day. Stay stronger, friends.